Welcome back to another English 101 video. Boy, you are almost at the end. I appreciate all your hard work this semester. I've enjoyed watching each of you progress in your writing skills. And boy, the last paper of the term, this position paper, is where you get to demonstrate all the progress you've made and everything that you've learned. The position paper is weighted more than any of the other papers. It's worth 350 points because it is where you have to demonstrate literally all of the competencies that are required for English 101. It is given in lieu of a final exam, right? And so it's super important that you do well on that. For many students, especially if you're sitting at a C, the grade on this paper is going to determine whether you pass or fail the class. So you want to be particularly attentive to all the module materials, right? Because I think you know at this point that this is not just some kind of generic 5-paragraph essay. There's specific concepts you're expected to demonstrate in terms of the Toolman argumentation concepts that were in the module materials in previous weeks, right? Toolman ideas about grounds and warrant. That's what you do with those sources that agree with you, right? And you got feedback on your annotated bibliography if you were missing sources like that, right? And I gave you suggestions about where to find them. But many of you have all the sources that you need, right? Because the idea is that if you did a great job on the annotated bibliography, you can use those same sources to write the position paper. The sources that agree with your thesis will be used for grounds, right? The grounds are the facts from the sources that you point to that help support your argument. However, facts aren't enough to be persuasive by themselves. That's why you need the warrant. The warrant, this is previous material I'm reviewing here, right? The warrant is where you use your own logic to show the reader how this makes your case, how this proves your thesis, right? And that can get tricky, right? Because the warrant does not come from the source, it comes from your own head, right? And you have to be careful to make sure that you don't commit logical fallacies, right? And so that's why that reading is in there. I think that I think I've said this in previous videos. Part of learning how to do something is also learning what not to do, right? And so the reading on logical fallacies will give you some good examples and ideas about things you want to avoid in your writing in the position paper. Here's an obvious thing to avoid, though. You do not want to use first person in this last paper. Now, of course, that's in the assignment directions for the position paper, but I thought this would be a good time to remind you. Because remember, this is persuasive writing, similar to what you did in the op-ed, but these are two very different audiences. Op-ed readers, that's a popular audience. That's literally anybody that reads newspapers and periodicals. Position papers are for academic readers, right? And so they have a different approach. They do not expect personal examples. They do not expect the use of first person I. So if you use first person in your paper, or if you use personal examples and you say things like, well, a sugar tax won't work because I would just buy whatever I wanted, right? That will just destroy your credibility with the reader. It's going to make the reader not take what you say seriously, unfortunately. Position paper readers care about the sources. They care about the facts. They want to see that you understand what other people who are experts in the field are saying in the debate, and they expect you to carve out your own place in that debate by showing that you understand those ideas, right? And you show your understanding by your utilization of those Toolman concepts, right? So the sources that agree with you are for grounds and warrant. You're also supposed to have a source that disagrees with you, right? And you with that source, you show you understand their argument, you make some concessions, and you develop a refutation. That's in the previous week's module materials, and you definitely want to look through that if you haven't, right? Because the way to deal with opposing sources is not to attack them and tell your reader how stupid they are, right? That's called an ad hominem attack, where you attack someone on a personal level just because they don't agree with you, right? Remember, if these are credible sources, right, then even if they disagree with you, that doesn't mean they're dumb. Part of the point of English 101 is that you're supposed to sort of realize by the end that there's a lot of valid viewpoints on both sides of a lot of these issues. And the way that we come to a resolution of these discussions in a democracy is not by calling the other side names and not by claiming some kind of moral high ground, right? We get in, we discuss the issue, we weigh the facts on both sides like rational people, and we work together to figure out what the right answer is. That's how real democracy works. Anyhow, so again, same thing. When you're working on your concessions and refutation for the source that disagrees with you have to be careful because if you attack them on a personal level, you claim they don't know what they're doing, they don't have as good of credentials as your sources. Again, that's an ad hominem attack, which is talked about in the logical fallacy section. You want to avoid that. You want to avoid either or arguments, right? That suggest that, well, we either have to ban e-cigarettes completely or have no regulation at all. Well, no, that's not true, right? There's a lot of middle ground there. I'll let you read more about these here, and you can message me if you have questions or concerns. And hopefully, though, too, when you have the peer review this week, if you have some fallacious reasoning in your paper, even if the other student doesn't know what the name of the logical fallacy is, they might say, hey, you've got some issues with how you're dealing with this source. It's not very persuasive. Okay? But again, there's lots of room for your own ideas in this paper. There should be plenty of your own ideas in this paper. What's persuasive is how you make use of the facts and quotes from the sources. Okay, enough about that. There's plenty of previous module materials that cover Toolman. Lots of examples, sample papers from students that I think will be useful to you. Then we've got this section on the conclusion. I'll leave it to you to read this, but position papers always provide a high level of specificity of what kind of changes or policies the author supports, right? And so you have to be very specific in here. This is in the last few paragraphs of the position paper. If you're not there yet, that's okay. If you don't make it there by the peer review, that's fine. But you're going to want to go back and look at this because your conclusion can't just be where you reiterate things you already said and then you say, yeah, we need more regulations on e-cigarettes. Okay, no. What kinds of regulations do you want? Why do you want them? Right? Do you support a flavor ban? Why not? Do you think there should be a limit on how much nicotine should be in these pods? Right? We have to get into some specifics or the reader will feel like you're wasting their time. Same with the sugar tax. Oh, you think there should be a tax? Okay, well, what are we talking about? How much are we talking about? Are we talking about just on soda or all sugary beverages like iced tea? Right? Oh, you don't want a tax? That's absolutely acceptable and understandable. What are some things you would suggest should be done instead? Right? Anyhow, there's some thoughts in here to help you kind of poke at that. But this is similar to what you did in the op-ed because op-eds have a call to action at the end. Position papers do too. Position papers are just more complex and require more specificity. If you want to use one of your sources to help give you some ideas for what you would like to see happen, what kinds of regulations you do or don't want to see, that's a great idea to have some citations in the conclusion. Oh, look, it took me back here, right? Here's all these great Toolman materials, right? You definitely want to look through there if you haven't. So we talked about this. Oh, and then again, remember, if you don't get to this before the peer review, I think that's fine. Some folks are going to be tinkering with these things in week 16. But some folks will finish all these things, and then week 16 will just be all about editing, which would be fabulous. Because let me tell you, this paper has to be really, really polished when you submit it. If it's filled with grammatical errors, I will fail it. and you will fail the class. It doesn't matter how good the ideas are, because the thing is, there's very little time to cover grammar in 101, and there's even less in 102. 102 is all about research. So if you can't already write clear, complete, effective sentences, you're not going to do well there. And so it's my job to make sure you have developed those skills before you leave my class. Lots of folks that are struggling with this, I've given you links about tutoring and places to get help, but feel free to reach out to me as well. I'm happy to help out in any way that I can or refer you to other resources. But we'll talk more about editing next week. But again, just to kind of put a plug in for that now. Obviously, with the peer review, it doesn't have to be polished and perfect. You're just trying to get as much written as you can so you can get some helpful advanced feedback from 2 other smart people in this class. That advanced feedback is so important. I've decided to opt to add some additional weight to this particular peer review. It's worth extra points because it is the last paper of the term. So I would strongly encourage you to participate in the peer review process, even if you haven't done well in past peer reviews. Lastly, there is a section in here where it talks about how to create a title and image for your paper. Yes, you need to use a cover, not a cover page because it's still going to be MLA formatted, but on the first page of your paper, after your name and all that MLA information, you're going to include a rhetorically significant image and title combo. Okay. The sample papers all have them. I'm a kind of a visual learner, so I'd encourage you to look at those so you can get an idea of what I mean. But this page sort of talks about how you need the image and the title to work well together in order for them to be rhetorically significant. You can't just choose any random image. This page and the link to the Prezi here will help you choose an effective image and help you develop a title to go with it to create a truly engaging position paper. Of course, images that you find on the internet are sources and require proper citation, so this Prezi also explains how to do that. Again, you very well may not get to that before the peer review, but I thought I'd put these materials in there now. And then that way, anybody who's working ahead, has access to them, and then you can just come back and refer to these later if you're don't quite get that far. I think that's about all I've got. I just kind of wanted to give you an overview of this week because the thing is, I worry about this sometimes. There's not points attached to these things, right? Because the focus is on the peer review. But these things are really important, and I worry about, the folks who don't look at all the module materials, because if you give me a conclusion that is just a summary of things you have already said, I'm going to take mad points off, right? It ruins your credibility with the reader. They have invested all this time in reading the thing. You used all the sources to build up your credibility. Now it's time to add your voice to the discussion. And when all you do is summarize things you've already said, just because some instructor in high school told you that's what you're supposed to do, it hurts my heart. It does, right? This is college, folks. This is college level writing. I know you can do well on this paper. And all to do that, you just got to be attentive to all the different parts of it, like this, and to think about what they do, right? I'm your resource for help. Remember, I've got those ongoing virtual office hours, but if those times don't work for you, message me. We can figure out a different time to meet that way. Or you can just Canvas inbox me. I have lots of students that I've been corresponding with that way, and they know that I'm quite responsive. I'm generally on here grading papers or doing something during the weekdays. That's about all I've got. Again, I appreciate your work all semester. This is a big push at the end. Hang in there and let me know how I can help. Take care now. See you next time.